we're just to be ready. Oh, by the way, I need to have your website good to go because you have content. You have a Spanish content, which is
Okay.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that was another thing that caught my attention. I need to talk with to Margaret. I said to myself. Okay, so we're live now, and yeah, everybody, welcome back. This is your podcast, Verano 1711 podcast. Today we have a special guest and a very, very interesting topic, which has to do with women in ministry. You may be or may not be familiar with the term egalitarianism. Today, our guest will be addressing that question and more. We have with us Margaret Mowczko. Margaret, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. It's a beautiful day here in Australia, in Sydney. Yeah.
I need to ask you, is Australia considered a real continent itself?
Don't ask me that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm
uh,
not going to answer that in case I embarrass myself.
okay. So yeah. So people, if you want to come on and drop your questions, whatever, feel free to do it. That's part of the joy of doing interviews, to talk with the authors themselves. So I personally decided, I was just talking to Margaret off camera right now about this. I think this is a very important, controversial, yes, controversial subject matter, but we need to address this kind of topics head on, because of the times we're living at, and also because there's a lot of questions, and I would go to yeah, I would go as far as to say misunderstandings, bad interpretations going on there in our churches, and we need to bring some sanity. I would put it that way. And Margaret has done an incredible work on this topic. We're going to be exposing you to her content, her website, where you can go and read a lot of articles written by her, where she is addressing all those questions related to this topic, women in ministry and egalitarianism. So keep an eye on that. Stay with us. And with that in mind, let me hit the intro. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Verano 1711 podcast. This is your host, Marv, and welcome, everybody. Today we have a special topic, as just mentioned in the intro. Remember, this is a podcast where we talk about religion because it's important, but we critically analyze it because that's even more important. Today with us, we have Margaret Mowczko from Australia. So you people, if you are Australia lovers, this is a good treat for you. So you need to take advantage of that. Margaret, I never been to Australia. Would you recommend me to go anytime I can to
Oh,
visit?
yeah. No, I love it here. Where I live on the Central Coast, which is north of Sydney, I'm surrounded by mountains and trees and rivers, and it's,
Yeah.
15 or 20 minutes to the beach, to the coast. And our weather's quite mild. It never snows. It can get hot, but it's
Yeah.
great. I love it here.
You are in Sydney, right? Which is
No, north of Sydney. Yeah, north of
oh,
Sydney.
okay.
Yeah.
But I've been told a lot of perhaps this is, I don't know how to call it, but in terms of animal wildlife, I mean, you can run into very. I have heard comments, people saying Australia is the place where you will find those animals that you won't find anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
That's the level of special this
Mm.
continent has for itself. So, I mean, I love animals, but that level it's beyond me. I don't know what would do that, but definitely Australia. It's a beautiful and exotic place if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
So, Margaret, today we're
Mm.
going to be talking about the case for egalitarianism. If you're ready to go, we have a bunch of questions here that we would like to address. And of course, please feel free to, lay your case. Just give us the lay of the land on every question. Of course, I'm gonna be jumping in from time to time to keep it more on a conversation fashion, but definitely we want to hear from your experience writing about this very controversial topic, and what was it like, the whole experience. So if you don't mind, we will go and throw the first question to you, and it's like this right now. Let's put it right here. So, Margaret, on a personal note, how did you end up writing and advocating for egalitarianism? Please tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Well, it wasn't planned. I had a blog,
Yeah.
like everyone had a blog, 15 years ago. And I would just write about anything and everything to do with my faith, to do with things I was reading in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I started the blog in 2009. In 2010, I wrote an article on what helper means in Genesis 2, where the woman is made as a helper for the first human who is alone in Eden. And then shortly after that, I wrote an article about Junior, looking at
Yeah.
what the Bible says about Junior. And then after a while, I wrote an article about Priscilla. And what I noticed was that those articles were getting
Hmm.
lots of viewers, surprising number of viewers. And no
Yeah.
one was interested in the other stuff that I was writing. They weren't interested in my Bible studies or interested in what I was writing about communion, which is a subject I'm passionate about. But they were interested every time I wrote something about what the Bible says about women, the stats, the statistics just
Yeah.
peaked. And so, well, that obviously was motivation to keep writing about that. So a few years ago, I changed my website and I pretty much only focus on egalitarianism now, how to,
Yeah.
what the Bible says about women. Oh, I also look a lot at women in the early church. I'm also very interested in how people in the late first century and in the second century, how they expressed their faith and how they did church. So I have quite a few
Yeah.
articles on women in the early church as well.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was sharing with Margaret off camera uh, how my background. I mean, most of us come from that kind of church tradition, uh, in which there is male primacy, and for some weird reason, if I can put it in a very polite way, for some weird reasons, women are not allowed to go beyond of the typical task that they get to do in church. And I was saying to Margaret that at some point, my curiosity sparked me into searching and investigating about this subject matter, because something was bothering me inside me. I was like, something is missing here. There is something that we're just not being told about women in ministry. And once you hit the road on that journey, I mean, you can stop. Margaret, I don't know you, but if you come from that kind of tradition, or if you are of that few people who have been in a church that they do permit the woman to develop their gifts. What's been your background in those
Yeah.
terms?
So I grew up in a Dutch Reformed church. So my ethnicity is Dutch. My parents were Dutch, and so
Yeah,
we belonged to a church in Australia where they sometimes even had sermons in Dutch. And yeah, only the men were elders, only the men could
yeah,
preach, only the men could go to Bible college. And it was something I struggled with, because when I became a Christian, it was a very precise moment, a very impactful moment. Um, I just thought, well, this is what I want to do. I just want to serve God. I want to just minister. I want to devote, so much attention to serving God. And I didn't know how I could do that as a girl, because I was
yeah,
only 10 at the time, and how I could do it as I was growing up. Because all the people who were doing ministries that I admired and I thought I could probably do that, they were all men. So the only women I saw ministering were pastors' wives or missionaries on foreign in other countries,
yeah,
and that just didn't appeal to me at all. I wanted to study the Bible. I wanted to talk about the Bible. I wouldn't even say I wanted to preach, but I wanted to do what I'm doing now, and just
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
God and talk about the Bible and
yeah.
teach. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And there were no role models, no woman. There were no women doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, people just saying yes a thousand times to what Margaret is just saying there. You know, and this may sound a bit of I don't know how to say it, but some might say that this would be too extremist. You know, that's very
Mhm.
extreme position. But I can tell you, I got people, especially elder people, you know, who have spent many years in church, and their theology set. I mean, they're just right there. And I've been told that if we get a woman in a teaching position in church, that church should have a ticket straight to hell. Like
Mm,
literally, that
yeah,
those have been the kind of words. Like
yeah.
if you put a woman preaching to us, or a woman just giving us the Sunday school class,
Mm,
you can be pretty damn sure that they will go to hell, because that's not God's will. And
yeah.
that was kind of the the rhetoric that they would throw at you, like with no restraint. They would just say it very blunt, in a very blunt way,
Yes,
and
yes.
that
It wasn't
was
very blunt.
harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So that bothered me, to be honest. I mean, I remember, I can tell you, oh my goodness, many anecdotes. For example, we were having an we were not even in church. We were having a devotional, which is something that we do in privacy,
yeah.
in our homes, just to keep what's the word? Just to keep the spiritual life, beyond the walls of the church. So we were doing a devotional, and I was very, very just. I just wanted to have women participating, doing, leading the prayer, for example. And
Mm,
I remember that I asked to one of my best friends in church, his wife, and I said to her, "Could you just do us a favor? Can you go and lead us in prayer? That would be awesome." Okay. Remember, this is just a devotional, and he will literally freak out, and she would say like, "No, I can't do it. I won't do it because we got male people here.
mm,
You man, you can do it. You are God's anointed servants, and you are the ones to do it. We shouldn't do it because that's
mm.
bad." And I
Yeah.
was like, really? Come on.
I remember turning down, like by this time, I think I was in my 30s, and a pastor had asked me to speak or something, and I said no, because that was the man's job, because that's what I believed. That's what I believed all the way until I was about 40. And that's when I started to, read the New Testament in Greek, started to study it a bit more. And then I saw, no, the Bible's not really saying what I've been told it says.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the watershed moment. Yeah. I agree. And just for you, everybody there, Margaret, she has an MA from I don't know how to pronounce it. Margaret, you can help me with it. Macquarie University. You already completed that degree, right? Or you're still working?
2016. Yeah.
Okay, now we need to go with the PhD. Why not? Why not?
No, I'm not doing it. No.
Okay. No, but the good thing is that you have a good training. I mean, an MA, that's a very considerable degree to work on this stuff. I mean, and so that's Margaret. Just for our listeners that may not be familiar with the term egalitarianism, what is that? What is it all about? Where that thing came from?
It's not a great term. It's not a precise term, but we can't think of anything better. And it just means that as humans, as children of God, as siblings in Christ,
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that, we often say that we're equal before God.
Yeah.
So why aren't we equal in the church? Why aren't we equal? Why aren't husband and wives equal in marriage if they're siblings in Christ? If they're so it's about not looking at a Christian and saying, are you male or female? It's looking at them and saying, what is your gift? Who are you? What's your gift? What's your morality even? It's looking at the person. And and our gender, our sex does come into it. I am a woman. I am hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I think I am fairly feminine. But I also have a brain, and I also have passion, and I also have a calling.
You sure
and
do.
I also have all these other things. So it's, the first question shouldn't be, are you male or female? The first question should be, what are you good at? What has God gifted you with?
Yeah, please sign me up with that. Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the second question, Margaret. So it goes like this, Margaret. Which passages? And this is where we're gonna get into real things. Which passages would be considered controversial, and why do you consider they've been misinterpreted?
And I mean, I could talk about this for hours, so I'll try to be really short. So even yesterday, because people write to me all the time, that's what I do mostly, just reply to people. And someone replied and said, well, women can't be pastors, elders, overseers, etc. because, and then he quoted 1 Corinthians 14, verses 34, and that starts with women should be silent in the churches. And then he quoted 1 Timothy 2:12, which says, I do not allow a woman to teach or to domineer a man, which is how I translate that. She needs to just quieten down. But I've also noticed, so almost no one quotes 1 Corinthians 14, 34 to 35 anymore, because I think a lot of people realize that there actually are some challenges in understanding this verse.
Yeah.
But the way that I interpret it as Paul's words. But the trouble with, so like this guy, his name's Bill. No one knows who Bill is, so I'll just call him Bill, which is his real name. So Bill, he'll just quote this one verse, But if we look at the whole passage where it comes from verse 26, 1 Corinthians 14:26 to 1 Corinthians 14 verse 40, we see that Paul silenced 3 groups of speakers. He silenced the tongue speakers if there was no interpreter. He silenced the prophetic speakers because it sounds like they were like some people were just hogging the floor and not giving other people a turn. So Paul says everyone can have a turn. Take your, so that everyone can learn, I should say. Because they were being unruly and disorderly. And then he silences women who wanted to learn. If we look, we need to look more carefully because Paul gives the context of the people he silences. He didn't just silence all the tongue speakers. He didn't silence all the prophetic speakers, and he didn't silence all the women. He silenced the women who wanted to learn, who were asking questions, but they were probably kind of maybe dumb questions or basic questions, or maybe they were asking too many questions. So he says, ask them at home, ask your husband. We don't want those questions in church, which is what I think is the context. So Paul silences 3 groups of speakers, not just women who wanted to learn. But at the beginning of the passage and at the end of the passage, verse 26 and verse 39 and 40, Paul encourages people to speak. And in the Greek, it's not clear in all translations, but in the Greek, there's nothing in there that says only men can do this. So at 1 Corinthians 14:26, and at the end, he's saying, do it, speak, prophesy,
Yeah.
But it has to be orderly. It has to be edifying.
Yeah.
And so I would, with that passage and with 1 Timothy 2:12, I often say Paul never silences orderly, edifying speaking. He never silences or restricts good, sound teaching. He only tries to shut down things when things are chaotic in Corinth, or when there's too many false teachers in Ephesus, because Paul tries to shut down male teachers in Ephesus, as well as a woman who needed to learn. So if we go to 1 Timothy 2:12, we really shouldn't separate it from the verse before. So 1 Timothy 2:11 and 12, they belong together because they start and they end in the Greek with a word that means just to chill, just to
chill out.
It doesn't mean silence.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, so in 1 Corinthians 14, yes, silence. It's the same Greek verb 3 times.
Okay.
The tongue speakers need to be silent if the prophetic speakers need to be silent if someone else wants to have a turn. The women need to be silent if they want to learn. They need to ask their questions at home.
Yeah.
In 1 Timothy 2, verse 11 and 12, it's a different word, and it's a phrase that just means to be quiet and settled, and it's kind of the opposite of causing a ruckus. So this Greek word is used in quite a lot of other early Christian literature, in 1 Clement, the Epistle to Barnabas, a lot of times in the Acts of Thomas. Oh, and it's also used in the Testament of Abraham, which was probably written in the 1st century. And it just means that to just live just a quiet life and not cause a ruckus, not to cause a disturbance, not to bother people, basically. So Abraham is said to have lived his life exactly the same phrase in 1 Timothy 2:11, 1 Timothy 2:12. And this is all on my website if people want to look it up, Testament of Abraham. Exactly the same phrase. So it's used for men, it's used for women, just means to be a kind of respectable and quiet. So that's the key. It's repeated at the beginning, at the end. This woman was causing some kind of disturbance, and she needed to just be quiet. She needed to learn, which is another key. She needed to learn. which is what it says in verse 11. So if you need to learn, that kind of means, well, maybe you're not ready to teach. And that's why Paul is telling Timothy, I'm not allowing a woman to teach. And then we come to the next phrase, or to authentein, which is the Greek word, a man. And the way that this has been translated, often using the word authority, I think is a real shame. Because it's not.
Why is that?
because if you look at how, if you look at any good lexicon, it's not about exercising just a healthy kind of authority. It's quite a rare word. So there's not a lot we can look at in the first century to see how this word was used. We have to look a little bit at later centuries. But it's like to have full power over someone.
Yeah.
So that's not a Christian behavior,
no,
to have full power over someone. Some lexicons use the expression to domineer or to control. And I think that's what a woman in Ephesus was doing. She needed to learn. She wasn't ready to teach. And she was controlling or domineering a man who I think was probably her husband. Because Paul had been talking about men. Again, we need to zoom out, not just look at this one little verse. We need to zoom out to get a bigger picture of what the situation was. So Paul first tells men, he doesn't tell, he's talking to Timothy, but he addresses the problem of angry, quarreling men. So this is problem behavior, and Paul addresses the problem behavior. Then in 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10, he addresses the problem of overdressed rich women in Ephesus. So again, this was a problem, and he says, well, instead of using your money on your hair and your clothes and your jewelry, use your money to help others, which is what he's saying, but not in those words so much. And then he talks about a woman. So he's talked about men, plural. He's talked about women, plural. And then he goes to a woman and a man for the rest of the chapter. So he is either talking about literally a woman, one woman in Ephesus, or he might be talking about a husband and wife situation that might have been happening with a few couples in the Ephesian church. But I don't think he was just saying, okay, I am like really sure. And I try not to be too pedantic because, this letter was written 2,000 years ago to
it's been a while.
It's been a while. I don't want to be too pedantic, but I am like really sure that Paul was not telling Timothy, no women anywhere for all time may ever teach. I am like really sure that that is not what he was saying. Paul was addressing problem behavior of certain people in the Ephesian church and offering advice on how to deal with that problem at that point in time. There's definitely principles we can learn from that. It's bad to be bossy. It's bad to be controlling. It's bad. Well, it's not good to teach if you're not ready to teach. That's. I've noticed that some other verses come up a lot lately. So even some people are realizing now that 1 Timothy 2 maybe is not as clear as people are led to believe. So people bring 1 Timothy. I've noticed a real shift because I've been doing this now for 15 years. So it was always 1 Corinthians 14 verses 34 to 35. But apart from Bill yesterday, not a lot of people picked it up. 1 Timothy 2:12, yes, it keeps being brought up. But people are bringing up 1 Timothy 3:2 now a lot. And that's the moral qualifications for overseers. And there's a phrase in there that says that an overseer must be the husband of one wife.
Okay,
and let me say, well, so women can't be the husband of one wife. That means women can't be overseers.
Let me pull up the passage so we can be in context here.
Yep.
and you can guide us through it, because that's new to me. That's
Okay.
yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, as you said, the First Corinthians 14, 1 Timothy 2:12, and everything. We're familiar. Those always, those are passages the people who are against.
Mm.
They most of the times. I mean, if not always, they always bring those passages up
Yeah, it's
into the
usually those
conversation.
two, but this one, and I am so glad you brought up the new Revised Standard Version,
Thank
because
you.
because they have translated it as, where did it go? Married only once. Married
Yeah.
only once.
You tell me
Okay.
what verse should I go?
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
1,
Okay.
1 Timothy 3:2. I have
Okay.
done a lot of work on this, and again, it's on my website. If you type in 1 Timothy 3:2 on in the search, you'll see I have got a stack of quotations which show how the early church understood this phrase in 1 Timothy
That's
3:2.
good.
So
Yeah.
kind of, if you just translate the words, it's husband of one wife, husband of one
Mm-hmm.
wife. And that's why people say, well, an overseer or a bishop, it says bishop here. I think overseer probably is a bit better. But anyway, an overseer or a bishop has to be a husband of one wife. So that means women can't be a bishop or an overseer. But it's an idiom. It's an idiom. And the early church overwhelmingly understood it as being married only once. That was considered, that was considered virtuous. So a widower or a divorced person, I know it is controversial. It's a bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
But
yeah.
please read my article, because that's how they understood it. But again, this virtue might have been really important to the Ephesian church at that time.
Yeah.
That because it also says hospitable. There are some people who may be bishops because of their life circumstances don't have the opportunity to be hospitable, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't have children. Do we stop saying, well, no, sorry, you can't be a bishop or an overseer because you weren't ever married, or you couldn't have children, or and it says keeping children submissive. Again, I'm not sure if I like that exact way that they've done that. But anyway, but we know that some bishops and overseers and pastors, some of their children, when they get older, do go off the rails a bit. They're maybe not Christian anymore. So are those people then not allowed to be, these are guidelines. We don't want to dismiss it, but these were guidelines that were important to the church at that point in time. And so I do think that 1 Timothy 3:2. So this expression, husband of one wife,
Mm-hmm.
and the inverse is wife of one husband, because there isn't a gender neutral way of saying this in the Greek, or a gender inclusive way. It's used 4 times in the pastoral epistles, 3 times in 1 Timothy and once in Titus. And one time it is used for women, for widows. And these widows, again, this is something I've looked into quite a lot. They weren't just ladies who had lost their husband. This was like a church order. And again, we see this in early Christian texts. So the men could be, have these certain titles. Women could be virgins and widows.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a church order. These people ministered. They were devoted to ministry. They weren't just people who had lost their husband. Yeah. But anyway, that's a bit tricky. But I do think the New Revised Standard Version, and I think it's the only translation, has got it spot on when they translate it as married only once. And if this is a bit confusing, I really do recommend people in your audience to look at my website, because I do think the information that I've got together is fairly conclusive. That's what it means.
Yeah, we definitely want to plug that in here. How should I type it to find that article, Mark?
So I think it's Paul. Okay, yes, let's do that. I forget what it's called. Yeah, I think it's Paul's theology of ministry. No, hang on. Let's just type in 1 Timothy 3:2 and see what comes up.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, searching. So you people out there who is watching the video, you can go and find this article.
Can you scroll down, because it's
Let me go down
just yet.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Margaret also has many of her articles being translated into. Is that Korean?
It's Korean. Yes.
Korean. Yeah.
Yes. I love Korean.
You've been very busy. Language. That's why you're here.
Love it.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
We're almost there. I can see it.
I think it's this one.
Paul's theology of ministry. No, the next one.
No.
This
one here.
No, the one that says 1 Timothy 3:2 and Priscilla.
Oh, this one.
That one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Okay. So this is based on a talk that I gave, but in a postscript, I start. So go down. So I just give a general of what it means. I do a background of the culture where, because even in Roman culture, being univira, which is Latin, and I can't pronounce Latin, was a virtue, and that means having one husband. So it's for women. Keep scrolling down. Okay, keep scrolling down.
I think it's this one. Yeah.
It's further down. Oh,
okay. Let me go down.
Yeah, it's so. Here we go. Go up a bit. Okay. So it's this postscript. Up a bit more, because here we go. Husband of one wife in early Christian documents. It started off as a footnote, and I keep finding these things because I do read early Christian texts. So, we've lost it. So go down. No, down. Yeah, because it's after the footnotes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go. Yeah. If not, yeah. I mean, to go through this would be. Yeah.
I need to read this. I mean, I haven't read through this. Let me ask you, Margaret, is this particular article been translated into Spanish yet?
No.
Okay.
Because this wouldn't have, because what I need to do is, so this started as a footnote, which got too long, so then I just stuck it at the end.
Yeah.
But now this keeps getting too long because I keep finding references as I keep reading. I'm going to have to. I'll do this after. I'll do this soon. Although I've got a backlog of articles I want to get on my site. But
you're still brushing it up.
Make this into a standalone article so that people can find it. But if you scroll down, you'll see there's lots. Tertullian is very clear what he means about it. Justin. He tells his wife that and they seem to have a nice marriage. Tertullian has said some terrible things about women, but he seems to really love his wife. But he says,
I don't like the guy.
Guys, they're not getting married. Oh, they had a sexless marriage though.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. That started early. This idea that if you wanted to be a really good Christian, you didn't have sex, even if you are married.
Oh my goodness.
We see this in 1 Corinthians 7, and I think that this is exactly what's happening in 1 Timothy 2.
I totally dislike Tertullian.
I think the woman who was domineering her husband was saying no more sex. And because also in 1 Timothy, I think it's 1 Timothy 4:3. It talks about teachers in the church who are forbidding marriage.
Oh yeah.
So people weren't getting married, and this is the same as 1 Corinthians 7. People were choosing not to get married, or if they were already married, they were not having sex.
Yeah.
And once you step into the 2nd century, there's a whole bunch of documents, Christian documents that say this.
Yeah.
Exhortation to celibacy. Yeah. Monogamy.
Yeah.
So when early Christian writers talk about monogamy, they're not talking about they're not talking about not polygamy, because polygamy was illegal in the Roman world.
Exactly.
But polygamy was extremely rare. So when they're talking about monogamy, they're talking about one wife or one husband in one's lifetime. And there's a Jewish document that I include in there as well that says the same thing. This was regarded as a virtue in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries.
Yeah, definitely. And people, Margaret is bringing she's bringing up the context, the historical, social, religious, which is, my goodness, is really, really important when we are addressing this kind of questions, and when we are interpreting the Bible. You need to take the context into account. I mean, and this is something, if I may say this, Margaret, this is something that I see a pattern. This doesn't happen in our churches. Why? Well, the reasons, I can give you the bucket list. What are those reasons? I can tell you many of those reasons is because of, structuring power, having authority, but authority not in a good way. Because people's got an agenda. And unfortunately, churches are not the exception. Unfortunately, here in my context, my social context in Honduras, patriarchy is like a big thing. It's changing a little bit. I need to be honest about it, but patriarchy is very, very rooted in our society here. I'm not sure in Australia, Margaret, you can tell us about that, but we are bringing that social status or phenomena into the church, when it should be all the contrary. The church bringing, as Michael Heiser used to say, we need to bring the Eden culture into our society, where woman, and this is something, Margaret, also I read it in some article in her website, where men and women are equal before God.
Yeah.
And if you remember in those passages, those first passages in Genesis, when God created man and woman, Adam and Eve, he is given rule over the earth to both of them, not just the male.
Yeah. So in Genesis 1, it says that God made humanity male and female, and they have the same status as God's image.
Exactly.
They have the same mandate to rule over the created world. They have the same purpose, the same shared authority from God. And then if you go into Genesis 2, so we have Adam and he's alone, and it's not good. But all these men keep wanting to do things on their own. It's not good. It's not good for men to do things on their own.
Yeah.
And also, actually, I was going to say something, but that might be too controversial. So we have this solitary human in Eden. So God comes and takes a side. It's not a rib. The Hebrew word doesn't mean rib. It's a side or a chunk out of this human and forms another human. And I don't know of a way better to show how compatible, how similar they are. And the term asa connecto is used twice to describe the woman. And connecto in rabbinic language, in rabbinic text, means similar. It's about similarity. It's not about polarity. It's not Venus and Mars. It's about similarity. and Asa, which is the word that's often translated as help or helper. All the other times in the Bible, other than when it's used for the woman, it's used for God or for a vital military assistance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not about making dinner, you know. It's about being vital help that is so much like when
this is the moment of the show.
He says, "At last, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh."
Yeah.
You know, same. They're the same. And the only job that Adam has in Eden, the only job that lasts, because naming the animals was like a one-off job. And the purpose of that job was to show that there was no animal that could be a suitable helper. That was the purpose of that thing. But so the only job that Adam has in the garden is to look after the garden.
Yes.
And some people think that the garden was like a sacred space, and that this was like a priestly role that Adam had, and he needed help. So he gets another priestly helper to help him in the garden. That was Adam's role in the garden. And we kind of forget that. We go straight to having kids, but there are no kids in Eden. In Eden, the job was to care for the garden, which, like I said, like John Walton, I really love the work of John Walton. He talks about the garden of Eden being a sacred space and the priest-like role of Adam and Eve, because that was the job of Eden, and then it all goes bad in Genesis 3. And it's only in Genesis 4 that they start having kids. Yeah. And there's no mention of procreation in Genesis 2. I just thought I'd throw that in. There's nothing about sex and children and procreation. It's about the garden, caring for the garden. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the third question, Margaret.
Yeah, which ties in with the created
because we
order.
want to value your time as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I'll be really quick about the created order. So
all right.
yes, in Genesis 1, there's no created order. It's just God. The idea is that God creates humanity, and they have exactly the same status, exactly the same mandate and authority. In Genesis 2, we have the story of Eden. This couple are in Eden, and there's one human. It can be argued that maybe this first human wasn't sexually differentiated, and then once the woman part was taken out, but that's a little bit controversial, so I don't need to go there. So yes, Adam was made first and then Eve, and Paul makes that point in 1 Timothy 2 verse 13, I think it is. But Paul doesn't say why he's saying Adam was made first and then Eve. It's just a statement. Yeah. And that statement is what the story is in Genesis 2. But this idea of man first and woman second also comes up in 1 Corinthians 11. And so 1 Corinthians 11 is probably the most difficult passage to work out. It starts off near the top. It says like man is head of the woman. And I have written a lot on this passage. It is one of my favorite passages, actually. And I think I might have cracked it. I think I might know because it's this 1 Corinthians 11 is so complicated. I don't think anyone should say, I know what it means, because it really is quite complicated. Yeah. So Paul says stuff at the beginning which totally sounds like, to put it simply, men are the boss, women aren't. But I want to also point out that the men and women here are doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. This passage is not about men and women more generally.
This is the famous head covering. Yeah.
Yeah, not head coverings. It's not head coverings. Anyway.
Just saying.
That's the heading, but it doesn't actually mention head coverings until the very end. And then it says the woman's hair is her covering. Okay? Yeah. The woman's hair is her covering. Okay, it's very, very complicated. Okay.
I know.
So
I know. I know.
if we read the first section,
just keep it like that.
yeah. If we read the first section, it does sound like men are the boss, women aren't. But
Yeah.
men and women are doing exactly the same thing. They are both praying and prophesying in church meetings. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. Because at verse 10 is the middle part. It's the crux of it. Again,
Yeah.
what does this mean? But women should have authority over,
Yeah.
over
That was a ghost.
her head. Over her, and the angels, I explained that somewhere else, but I'm not going to talk about that now because I know our times. But it's verse 11 and 12 that I want to look at.
Oh.
In the Lord, and that's us. Okay, so the first part is talking, it definitely sounds like a male hierarchy. There is no doubt about it. But then he goes, but hang on a minute, nevertheless, in the Lord, us. Woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. And then he brings up the creation account again, because creation is woven through this passage. Just as woman, Eve, came from man, so man came, etc., comes through woman. So he balances it out. So does coming first mean anything? No, because everything ultimately comes from God.
From God, yeah.
So this, thank you, Paul, for just adding this. And you know, even Jesus says, you know, the first will be last and the humble will be exalted. Like, how does the idea of being first, meaning being special, how does that factor into the gospel message?
Oh,
The
yeah.
gospel was for the least. The gospel is for the poor. The gospel is for the last. You know,
for the defenseless, the widow. Yeah.
Yeah, just as Eve did come from Adam, and then every other man ever since has come from a woman, but everything comes from God. So being first does not matter one iota.
Yeah.
So that's
there you have it, people. Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's go with question number 4. Almost there. So Margaret.
Come out a bit. Okay, so I knew we were going to talk about that. So I quickly, and this is on my website, I got it off my website. I have, just quoted a whole bunch of respected lexicons that go back to the early 1900s. These are not lexicons written by progressive feminists or liberals or whatever you call them. And the main sense of authentane, so that's in 1 Timothy 2:12, I do not allow a woman to teach. I do not allow a woman to domineer, to have, you know, this full control. There's, so here's one, Freiberg and Miller, there's 2 Freibergs, Analytical Lexicon of the Greek New Testament, of one who acts on his own authority, hence have control over, domineer, lord it over. But this is bad behavior for men and women. We're supposed to serve one another, not be the boss of other people. Because unfortunately, Christianity have really distorted the idea of authority.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we hopefully all of us are given an authority from God to look after creation, but also we have an authority to serve others, to use our gifts. But it's not an authority over our fellow siblings in Christ.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have authority over you. You don't have authority over me, but we just use our gifts that to serve and to bless, not to have authority over. I'll just quote Cynthia Long Westford, who has done
I know her.
extensive research, another great name, into.
Oh, by the way, I'm planning to, I have plans to bring Dr. Lynn Kohik to the show. So, Lord willing. Yeah.
Huge fan. Huge fan. I've done podcasts
I
with
know.
her. I've been interviewed on her podcast. Yes, I'm very proud
Yeah.
of that. Yeah. So this is what Cynthia Westfall says
Okay.
about authentain. The people who are targets of these actions are harmed, forced
Yeah.
against their will or compelled, or at the very least, their self-interest is being overridden because the actions involve an imposition of the subject's own will, ranging from dishonor to lethal force.
Okay.
And I've done my own research, not as much as Cynthia Westfall. And authentain isn't a good thing. So, of course, Paul's saying, I'm not allowing a woman to do it. I'm not allowing a woman to teach because she needs to learn. I'm not allowing a woman to authentain probably her husband because it's bad. It's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That Greek word authentain, it's also it's been familiar. That's why I decided to include it in the question. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. I mean, in my context, when they read authority, oh, that's the big deal. So it's just reserved for men. No, women, yeah, they got nothing to do with that.
Because they make being a pastor or being an elder about authority.
Exactly.
But when they put it about authority, it's not authority over. It's authority to serve. Authority
Exactly.
to serve.
I agree.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. Are women not allowed to serve? Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Doesn't make
How are we
sense.
going
So
with
let's
time?
let's oh, there's a bug here. I don't know what's doing there. Let me just remove it. I don't like bugs here. So we got question number 5. Let's throw it into the mix here.
Junior.
So Margaret,
Yeah.
for you, what's your this is one of my favorite. What's your take on Junia being a woman apostle, and how can we learn from that in terms of women in leadership and partnership in churches? Let me just say this before we can get to your answer. I remember I was listening to a Q&A that my mentor Michael Heiser did with his friend Debbie Burnett from Edinburgh, the University of Edinburgh, and they were talking about the whole egalitarian thing, and David Burnett went like, okay, did you know that in medieval manuscripts, scribes literally they changed the name from a female, which is the legitimate reading, to a male reading?
Yeah.
And I was like, really? That happened?
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Margarita, hit us with your answer.
So overwhelmingly, again, I've looked at the old texts up until that one. I have an acquaintance, maybe she'd call me her friend, I don't know, Bridget Jack Jeffries, who's doing her PhD on Junior, and she thinks she might have discovered an earlier manuscript than the one you're referring to where Junior becomes a man. But the overwhelming evidence is that she's a woman. And the thing is, if it was a man, it wouldn't be Junius, which is what it would be Junius with a U. It would be completely different spelling. So Junius, which is that name doesn't exist in Roman inscriptions or in Roman literature. So it's like saying there was this person called Elizabeth, but it's really a guy. But no man has ever been, that I know, is called Elizabeth, because Elizabeth is a girl's name. Junior is a girl's name. Anyway, that point might be a bit vague, so I'll move on. But Junior is a female name. It's not a masculine name. But the thing with Junior is, I think sometimes too much attention has been put on her, because she and her partner Andronicus are called outstanding among the apostles.
The apostles, yeah.
But and that's exactly how I understand it. This missionary couple were outstanding among the apostles, and no one is arguing that they were among the 12 apostles. No one argues that. So what's the big deal? And I count 21 people who are called in the New Testament with this word apostolos or apostoloi plural, not counting Jesus, who is actually called an apostolos, and not counting a whole bunch of people in, I think it's 1 or 2 Corinthians, and we don't know the names. Paul just mentions these apostoloi. But so, there's 21 people, and also that's not in counting Judas because he lost his apostleship, so I don't count him.
Yeah, he's out.
He's out. Yeah, very sad. But
yeah.
So this was a word that Paul used to describe people involved in important work. So they're like missionaries, they're like emissaries. Emissary is probably a better description.
Yeah.
And there was probably lots of men and women who were apostoloi and emissaries. And we still see this. We've seen this throughout the history, when the missionary movement really started, or not started, there's always been missionaries, but, the 17 and 1800s. In Australia, we have this story of this Baptist man had this vision of sending missionaries to China, I think.
Okay.
And he said, if we can get 100 men to China, we can save China. And do you know who he got? He got 5 women. Women. He didn't get any men. And I hope I'm saying the story correctly. They're called the 5 barley loaves. It's a beautiful story. Some people got sick, but I think 4 of them stayed there for a really long time and did tremendous work. So women have always been on the front line.
Yeah.
Doing missionary apostolic work. It shouldn't be controversial. Yes, Andronicus and Junior were outstanding among the apostles. It shouldn't be controversial.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for that. So last but not least, Margaret, to conclude, based on your experience, what advice would you give to those, including me, would you give to those willing to address such a thorny topic?
Yeah. Patience and grace.
I have a lot of
people who believe that men are the boss, they really believe that's what God wants.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of threads supporting this idea of male primacy. They're all Bible verses that I think have been interpreted poorly. And it takes a while to undo all those threads. Authentane, bad behavior, headship. What else does Paul say?
Yeah.
Because we haven't even touched on head, which I think is probably the most difficult topic. Yeah. So I'll just say really quickly, in Ephesians, Paul uses head-body metaphor 3 times. 3 times. And each time it's about the body becoming like the head. It's not about subordinating the head. It's about the body becoming like the head. Yeah. We have misunderstood so many verses.
Oh, yeah.
By reading 1 Timothy 2:12 and forgetting what else, by reading 1 Corinthians 14:34 and, supported by countless sermons that say, let's keep women down and silent. But the gospel is about being siblings in Christ. There's one Lord, one Spirit, one faith. Yeah.
Definitely.
So patience and grace. We don't want to fight against flesh and blood. We don't want to fight against our brothers and sisters. We want to just pull those threads and say, hey,
No, I was just going to say that the whole eternal subordination of the Son, it's another argument that I've been, seeing around. And that's why woman needs to, to submit to the male, to man's authority, which is God's glory, quote unquote. And there is an article, Margaret. I don't have the name right now here. It's just on the top of my head. But there's an article arguing that when Paul is saying the man being God's glory, Paul is drawing on Psalm 8. And the article argues that it should be in the context of that psalm in Hebrew, which is it would be Adam. So it's not talking about man singular. It's talking about humanity. So humanity is God's glory. That's the case that article makes.
Yeah.
That
So
I find that
that's 1 Corinthians 11:7. Again, this is another verse that I've looked into, and yeah, I think all of 1 Corinthians 11 actually has got the Genesis creation story.
Oh yeah,
Just
I agree.
So I will keep that idea in mind because I have heard it. In fact, that's what I do a lot. I keep all these different interpretations in mind, because we can't be pedantic, especially about 1 Corinthians 11. But yeah, I think I have made sense of that. So if you want to see how I interpret, so how does that verse go again? So man is the glory and image of God, and woman is the glory of man. I think Paul is really talking about men, and women, women. I don't think he's just talking about humanity there, but who knows? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this is something the scholarship is all about. I mean, you are pondering theories, interpretations, and there are some weird interpretations. Let's be honest.
There are some. Yes. Yes.
Just to tease our audience out a little bit. Have you read Troy Martin's article on the Petty Lion? Yeah.
Michael Hyde, your mentor, has. I have written a 2-part critique.
Okay.
And sorry, I don't think
I don't buy it. Right. And my mentor Heiser, he did a whole episode on his podcast on that chapter, and he drew a lot from that article. And Mark Goodacre, gave an answer, a response to that article. But me personally, I mean, the guy collects a lot of evidence, like text. Yes, for sure. But when it comes to interpreting the interpretation and exegetical side of it, I don't buy it.
Yeah, in case your audience doesn't know what we're talking about.
No, I know.
Yeah, so this is 1 Corinthians 11:15, I think. It says, so most English translations say the woman's long hair is given to her as a covering.
Exactly.
Exactly what it means. But Troy Martin has said that the woman's hair is a testicle.
Yeah.
Even just logically, you know what, I don't have time to go into it, but I have got a 2-part critique on that, and I provide a lot of texts as well.
Excellent.
From early Christian writings, from Stoic writers, Stoic philosophers about hair, because a lot of women at that time, and we have the frescoes, we have the statues, we have the coins of women, and they're bareheaded. So if hair is supposed to be some sort of, I really don't like using this word, testicle, why is their hair being destroyed? So even just on that logical, so I have lots of, I did a lot of work on that. So I think it's, you can look that up.
I was listening to Lucy Pepiat. She doesn't buy it either. To find that a little bit weird.
Yes, she just put this one little line in her book, in a footnote. Is it, or it might be Cynthia Westfall. Cynthia Westfall has a very sort of polite thing where she mentions it because she's a scholar, so she needs to mention it. And then she sort of just says, yeah, but no. Yeah. And,
No.
some people have, like Michael Heiser really accepted that explanation. So some people do. I just don't at all. The overwhelming evidence is that women did have their hair exposed at that time. They would cover their heads in certain circumstances. But even just what people are saying about hair at that time. So I quote people, and they talk a lot about the angels from Genesis 6. So I've looked at all these Jewish texts that mention the angels. None of them mention hair. They just mention the beauty of the women. None of them mention hair. So that whole argument that it's got something to do with these angelic watchers seeing exposed hair actually doesn't make any sense of the actual Jewish texts and the Old Testament itself that mentions the watchers. Hair is never mentioned in any of these texts. I think there's one that mentions the face and everything. It's been a while since I've looked into it, but it doesn't hold water. I just can't see that Troy Martin's thesis on 1 Corinthians 11:15 holds water at all. Yeah, and he's a smart man. Smart man. Yeah,
no, he's a prominent scholar, definitely.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, and he published a collection of his essays not too long ago, and I was curious to see whether that one would be in it. Whether he still believes it. That kind of thing, and he did. So it's obviously something that he still holds to, that hair somehow. And also a lot of the material that he says about hair being a conduit of, I really hate saying these words, a conduit of semen and being a testicle. They're like in Aristotle's time. In the meantime, we've had people who started doing dissections, ancient physicians doing dissections on. But by the time Paul's writing, no one, almost no one is believing this stuff. Just because Aristotle and Hippocrates and other people thought strange things about our hair, men's and women's hair, doesn't mean that this was common knowledge in Paul's time. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that that kind of knowledge affected customs. Yeah.
So there you have it, people. There's a there's a lot to ponder about these passages, but I think Margaret, for your time, your insights on this. I mean, this doesn't do justice to the whole work she's been doing on these passages and women in ministry and women in early Christianity. Please go there. I need to go. I'm going to put here her website. Please go there. If you can't read in English, that's not an issue. I mean, she's been working really hard, and she's got content translated into Spanish. So you just go there, go to the Español tab. Can I say in Spanish?
I've written it in Spanish.
Sí, vayan ahí a Español, ¿verdad? Le dan clic ahí y ya ustedes van a poder encontrar todo el contenido que ella tiene en español, así que no hay excusa. So, Margaret, I'm just saying that people has no excuse. I mean, they just need to go there, read through those. It's a lot of, just look at this. Everyone here, you just need to click on it and enjoy yourself. Okay, have a good trip there. Enjoy it and take advantage of this content that Margaret has been putting out there, and she's gonna be putting a lot more. So just keep an eye on it. More content is coming here for us. So, Margaret, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming to the show and talk about this important subject. I mean, I wish I could talk a lot more. I have a lot to talk about this. I'm pretty sure you do. So I don't know if you have final comments for our audience today.
Yeah. No, I'm delighted to be here. I love talking about this stuff because it really affects everyone in the body of Christ when we shut
It
women down.
does.
It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, with that said, people, keep an eye on it. Just to remind you, we are coming to our next episode in here in the Veriano 1711 podcast. And on March the 6th, John J. Collins, the one and only, is coming to the show to talk about the apocalyptic imagination. His book, the third edition, was translated into Spanish. So I reached out to Dr. Collins, and he so gladly accepted to come into the show and talk about it. So please put it right there on your calendars. Bring your questions, and we're gonna be talking extensively and asking a lot of questions about that because it's important. So once again, thank you so much. Until the next time, bye now.